ओम श्री चिन्मय सद्गुरवे नमः. Book reading Saddarshan, Vision of Truth. Composition by Bhagawan Raman Mahashi. Commentary by Chinmay Missions Param Poojya Guruji Swami Tejomayananda ji. Seeing the truth is being the truth. Saddarshan. A brief life sketch of the author Bhagawan Raman Mahashi. Bhagawan Raman Mahashi was born on 30th December 1879 in Tiruchuji village of Ramanad district of Tamil Nadu. His father, Sri Sundaram Iyer, was a lawyer by profession. His childhood name was Venkata Ramana. Relations and close acquaintances report that from his early childhood he would go into trances. In reality, he was only introspecting. His deep inborn devotion was centered on Arunachala, which is worshipped as a Jyotirlinga, the very embodiment of Lord Shiva. Raman Mahashi's father died when he was very young. Young Ramana did not know then where Arunachala was located, but he knew well that it was his final destination. In 1895, a relative from Madurai informed him that Arunachala was in Tiruvannamalai in Tamil Nadu. A year later, on 29th August 1896, Venkataramana took 3 rupees from his elder brother's fees and left home for Tiruvannamalai. Before leaving home, he left a note asking his family not to waste money in his search. The money for the rail fare was insufficient, so he pawned his earrings. On reaching Tiruvannamalai, he threw the remaining money into the lake opposite the temple, having thus renounced all worldly ties. He said words to this effect: "At your command, I have come to you." Thus saying, he surrendered totally at the altar of Arunachala. From then on, he never left Tiruvannamalai. He attained Mahanirvan on 14th April 1950 at the age of 71. For the first 5 months of his stay at Tiruvannamalai, he lived within the temple premises located at the foothills of Arunachal mountain. He would go into long periods of self-absorption samadhi. Later, he shifted to the place of Bhu Samadhi, place of burial, place of noble souls, of a Mahatma noble soul, and still later to a mango orchard. He lived in silence and solitude for years in 2 different caves of Arunachala, and the final years near the place of Bhu Samadhi of his mother. Bhagawan's mother was living with him from 1916 and had died in 1922. Sri Raman Maharshi spent his early days at Tiruvannamalai in detachment, silence, and self-enquiry. He was known as a man of severe penance, a saint and a divine soul. Some believed him to be an incarnation. His fame spread far and wide, and people from all parts of India and other foreign lands came to him and became his ardent devotees. Sri Raman Mahashi has composed a few poems in Tamil. They show his literary skill, talent, and deep devotion and reflect his vivid insight. His teaching is available in many other books like Ramana Gita, Talks with Raman Maharshi, Saddarshan, Day by Day with Bhagawan, and the newsletters of Ramanashram. Had a good command over many languages and had translated his own Tamil compositions into Sanskrit, Malayalam, and Telugu. He was the very embodiment of divine virtues, and his life manifested those fully. To this day, he inspires lakhs of people, irrespective of class, color, gender, and nationality. Introduction to the text Saddarshan. In India, philosophy is called Darshan Shastra, the science of seeing life. Bhagavan Raman Maharshi, in the present text Saddarshan, explains what is true vision or the vision of truth. We all perceive the world and take our perceptions to be real, but are they so? Is what we understand of life and the world the complete truth? Such fundamental questions may seem redundant or even scary to the unthinking mind. Even modern science proves conclusively that our experience of the world is relative, incomplete, and at times totally unreal. My perceived world is the sum total of experiences gathered through my senses, ears, skin, eyes, tongue, and nose as sound, feel, form, and color, taste, and smell. Does the world appear the same to all? Surely, the world to an ant and an elephant, a unicellular amoeba, and a man, a child, and an adult appear different. A blind man is dead to one fifth of my experiences. He lives in the world without forms and colors, and a deaf man without sounds. Moreover, if I add an external instrument to my sense organs, the world would be different even to me. My hand, which seems otherwise clean, has innumerable bacteria, viruses, and dust particles when seen under a microscope. Furthermore, the likes and dislikes of my mind color my vision of the world. I become blind to the faults of the one I love and see only bad in the one I dislike. My intellect too adds to my unique experience of the world by its own way of judging and analyzing. Add to that the cultural differences, peer and group pressure, newspaper and TV influences, and we realize that each of us perceives and understands this world in our own subjective way. From a particular standpoint, the world appears one way, but as the standpoint changes, Appearances also change. So, what we perceive is not absolutely real or as it is, but appears in a particular way due to the limitations which we experience. Limitations, defects, qualities, and nature of the instruments through which we experience it. What we see is not the truth, but a version of it. It is a relative reality and not the absolute reality. Knowledge of objects and phenomena of the world Jagat is not the total understanding of life. Without knowing the knower, the individual jiva, such knowledge is incomplete. Moreover, we know that we have neither created the world nor ourselves. Hence, there must be a creator, Ishvara, of this world of things and beings. Only with the understanding of Jiva, Jagat, and Ishvara, their interrelation and true nature, can we know the complete truth. We realize that at present ours is a very limited view of life. A misunderstanding may arise from the above statement that there are two realities, the relative and the absolute. The relative is what we experience, and absolute is something out of this world or apart from our experiences. That is not so. It is our experience of that one truth that is relative, and this relative knowledge differs from person to person. Our experience is conditioned by the instruments we use. If we have to know the truth as it is, we would have to remove the instruments. Whatever would then remain would be the truth in its pure form. This seeing without eyes and knowing without thoughts is Saddarshan. Hence, seeing the truth is being the truth. It is not seeing an object apart from the seer. For instance, presently I see myself as a human being by being one and behaving like one. Imagine then the state of one who remains in this world as absolute reality itself. One may well ask, what is the purpose of knowing the truth? What do we stand to gain? We are quite comfortable living in this plane of relative reality with our own pet pleasures and pains. Let us examine this. All beings, without exception, work to be happy and want to get rid of sorrows through possessing and enjoying material things and pleasures. But by this way, sorrow is not seen to end. Inquiring into the root of our sorrow, we realize that it is the false vision of life due to which we suffer. If a person mistakenly takes himself to be his reflection in a mirror, then would he not be pained to see his bloated form in a convex mirror? If he realizes that he is free from the limitations of both the mirror and the reflections therein, he begins to enjoy the spectacle in front of him. Thus, knowing the truth, he is totally freed from superimposed sorrows and limitations and enjoys unconditioned bliss. Total cessation of sorrow and attainment of supreme happiness. Atyantika dukha nivrutti paramananda prapti cha. Let us inquire, who is a fit student for this knowledge. It is one who wishes to wake up from this illusion which one has been believing to be real from innumerable lifetimes. An inquiring mind alone would hit on the possibility that what is experienced may be unreal and would want to know the real. The question then is, am I a fit student? The following acid test would show our fitness. A. If required to do so, am I willing to do what I do not like and give up what I like? B. If I am told that the truth would disturb or end my present way of life, am I still willing to give it up and know the truth? C. If I am faced with the fact that the truth is somehow terrible and bitter, am I willing to know it? D. Am I willing to pursue it, whatever the cost? I may even have to face death like Nachiketas. If I answer yes to all of the above, I stand a good chance. On the other hand, if I say, what is A. What is the material benefit of knowing the truth? B. What is the use of this knowledge in continuing my worldly life comfortably? C. I am willing to accept only what appeals to my mind and inclinations. D. I am unwilling to sacrifice anything. Then I am unfit for this knowledge because I am more interested in the comforts of my present life than in knowing the truth. With this understanding of Saddarshan, its purpose, and our fitness, we shall start the study of this text. It was originally written by Bhagawan Raman Mahashi in Tamil. It was translated into Sanskrit by his devotee Vasishtha Ganapati Muni. This is not a text to refute or to establish a particular school of thought. It does not take up the analysis of duties, morals, and code of conduct for man. It is not a book of categories, Prakran Grantha, like Vivek Chudamani. Here, the Raman Maharshi revels in his experience of truth and talks of the inquiries that led to it. In the very first verse, Bhagavan explains what Saddarshan is and how we can gain it. Satpratyaya kin vihaya santam hrudyesha chinta rahito rudakhyah katham smaramastamameyamekam tasya smritistatra drudhaiva nishtha. Can there be thoughts of the existence of objects without the existence principle? No. This existence, named as Ruth, is in the heart itself, free from thought. How can we remember that one immeasurable existence? Its remembrance is in the form of firm abidance in it. In Hindu tradition, a religious text usually commences with the remembrance of the Lord in the Mangala Shloka, the verse invoking auspiciousness. Therein, the author prostrates in all humility to the Almighty, invoking His grace. Here, besides invoking auspiciousness by remembering the truth, Sat, the theme of the text is revealed. Also, the highest form of prostration, being one with the truth, is indicated. Satpratyayah kinnun vihaya santam. Can there be thoughts of existence without the principle of existence? We experience every object as is. Pot is, book is, and so on. Without isness, no object can exist. All existent objects have existence, Sat. Yet, existence is not an object. For example, without the concept of beauty, beautiful objects would not be known. Beautiful objects can be described and shown, but beauty itself is beyond words. Further, non existent objects cannot exist. Non existence, asat, cannot exist, and existence can never become non existence. There is no existence of non existence nor non existence of existence. नासतो विद्यते भावः नाभावो विद्यते सतः. Srimad Bhagavad Gita 2.16. The thoughts of existing objects satpratyayaha are many, but the existence principle is one. The objects and their thoughts keep changing and differ in name, form, and qualities, but the existence which supports them is unchanging, therefore indestructible. A seed is, it grows into a tree, which is, the tree is felled, and then timber is, it is made into furniture, then chair is. The names and forms change, but the isness that they enjoy remains as the one unchanging substratum on which the names and forms are created and destroyed. Thus, on giving up names and forms, the truth is experienced as pure existence. Hrudi esha chinta rahita rudakya. In the heart, free from thoughts named as heart. Existence, being the support of all, is all pervading. It is, however, experienced in the heart as consciousness and therefore named Ruth. It illumines all thoughts, itself remaining free from thoughts. In other words, this isness of objects is experienced as I within every experience. It is not somewhere far or near, but one with me. Thoughts exist because of me, but I exist independent of thoughts. I have no thoughts even though thoughts arise from me and are illumined by me. Katham smaramah tam ameyam ekam. How can we remember that one immeasurable existence? We are told that we should always remember the Lord. There are many ways of remembering Him. One may repeat His name, feel His presence, experience His grace, and so on. In such remembrance, the Lord is understood to be different from me. In fact, one can only remember something different from oneself. The truth being one with me cannot be remembered. Remembering and forgetting are both experienced as thoughts. I remember something and I forget something else. Truth is free from thoughts of objects and therefore cannot be remembered or forgotten. tasya smriti tatra dridhaiva nishtha. The only way to remember it is to be one with it. I remember that I am a human being by being one, not as a thought of my mind which I need to repeat. Firm abidance in the truth as I am existence, which is the substratum of all objects and is the consciousness which illumines all objects, is Saddarshan. Having expounded the path of knowledge in the previous verse, Bhagawan now takes up the path of devotion. We realize that they are not opposed to each other, but are different approaches to the same truth. मृत्युंजयं मृत्युभियाश्रितानाम् अहं मतेर्मृत्युमुपैति पूर्वम् अथ स्वभावादमृतेषु तेषु कथं पुनर्मृत्युधियोऽवकाशः. For those who, being afraid of death, have sought shelter in the conqueror of death, the I notion dies first. Thereafter, in them who are by nature immortal, where there is any room for the notion of death. In this world, people are fraught with 1,000 fears. We are scared of facing unpleasant situations, of losing acquired comforts or loved ones. We shy away from being rejected, losing face, becoming a faceless part of society, and so on. Of all the fears, the fear of death is the most natural, though unreasonable, invincible, and the hardest to bear. To bear. It is the fear. It is the fear to the unknown of losing one's identity, fear of the unknown, of losing one's identity, of going into non existence, of not wanting to leave our dear ones. Fear of death is the fear of change, death being the ultimate change in life. I would not fear death if I knew I am deathless or if I wanted to die. Fear arises when I identify with my body, and despite knowing the inevitable death of the body, I want to live on. If I accept the inevitable, I would have no fear. None wants to be in fear, so we seek various ways to alleviate our fear. Some of the common ways of escaping from fearful thoughts are being in the company of others and talking it out. We shudder to face fear alone. We generally seek refuge in someone instead of seeking refuge in someone who is himself fearful. If we seek refuge in one who is fearless, who have conquered death, we would become fearless. I seek money from a rich man, not from a beggar. With faith that the Lord is immortal, we surrender at His feet. Surrender is giving up of oneself to Him or losing our identity in Him. Let us inquire, who is fearful? It is the individuality, ahammati alone, that is fearful. When it is surrendered, given up, who is there left to feel fearful again? The pure self, which is by nature immortal, cannot fear death. The ego is no more. The truth alone remains. This is Saddarshan, the story of young Markandeya, who held on to Lord Shiva, the Mrityunjaya, when death tried to catch him, is well known. Dhruva too, before parting from this world, put his foot on the bowed head of death, bowed head on the death of the death. These examples symbolize the attainment of our immortal nature. For such a person, death is like a pickle which adds spice to life. मृत्युः यस्य उपसेचनम्. Kathopanishad 1.2.25. The path of knowledge needs a subtle intellect, without which inquiry is not possible. The path of devotion needs strong faith, without which surrender is not possible. Following either path, one reaches the same immortal self. Truth is all inclusive. One reaches it when approached from any angle. In Saddarshanam, Bhagawan indicates the truth through various fundamental inquiries. Here he takes up the cause effect relationship. सर्वैर्निदानं जगतोऽहमश्च वाच्च प्रभो कश्चिदपारशक्तिः चित्रे त्रैलोक्यं च विलोकिता च पटः प्रकाशोऽप्यभवत् स एकः. The primary cause of the world and the I is accepted by all to be some Lord with immeasurable power. Here in this picture, that one alone has become the scene, the seer, the canvas, and the light also. Cause hunting is natural to man. The inquiry begins from me and my experiences. I see before me the vast universe of infinite things and beings. For every effect, there must be a cause. What then is the primary cause of the experiencer, Jeev, and the experienced Jagat? The Jeev cannot be the cause of the Jagat. He was already born into it. He can at most be the cause of his dream world or of confusions in the world. The Jiva cannot be the cause of himself due to the fallacy of self dependence. Another Jiva cannot be the cause of this Jiva. For who created that Jiva? It would go on, regress ad infinitum. The Jagat cannot be the cause of itself, since it is, if it were already there, where would be the need for its creation? The world cannot be the cause of this Jiva, as the inert cannot create a sentient being. There must be a third factor, which is the cause of both the Jiva and Jagat. That cause is called Ishvara or God in religion and truth in philosophy. It must have infinite potential for creation, must be omnipotent, omniscient, and omnipresent. Different schools of thoughts may attribute different qualities to the Lord and different relations with Him, but all thinking men have to accept the existence of a primary cause. Some ask the question, if God created all, who created God? This question is fallacious. If one accepts that God is the ultimate cause, then by asking for his cause, we are reducing him to an effect. If we accept some cause for God also, then again the question of a cause for that cause can be raised. This ends up in infinite regress. Hence, God is the causeless cause. With what did the Lord create the world and its beings? If it is some material other than Himself, then He does not remain the primary cause, as we would ask who created that material. So we understand that He created this entire world out of Himself, meaning He Himself appears in this world and all living beings. To explain this, Bhagawan gives an illustration. A knitted picture of wool shows mountains, a river, sunset, animals, and a person watching. If we were to start pulling the wool, we would realize that one ball of wool alone has become all. Similarly, truth alone is the the illuminator, and various names and forms of this world. In essence, Jiva, Jagat, and Ishwar are one. This is Saddarshan. To realize that we are living in a God created world itself would uplift us. It is well said, behold this beautiful poem, world of the Lord. Pasya Devasya Kavyam. Now, fourth verse. This verse inquires into the reason for our vision of duality and differences. आरभ्यते जीवजगत्परात्मा तत्त्वाभिधानेन मतं समस्तम् इदं त्रयं यावदहं मतिः स्यात् सर्वोत्तमाहं मतिशून्यनिष्ठा. All philosophies begin with the naming of the principles of the individual, the world, and the Supreme Soul. As long the notion of I remains, so long these three will also exist. The abidance in the self, where there is absence of the I notion, is the best of all. The various philosophies and religions differ in their determination of the nature of the individual, the world, and the Lord. Their interrelations, nature, qualities, and so on. If such discussions end in unity, either by the determination of the one underlying truth or by agreeing to differ, it is all right. It may otherwise lead to dispute. Going to the root of all differences, we find that without the I notion, no differences would be perceived. Therefore, it would be quite impossible to gain the vision of oneness if one were to keep the ego intact. The wave in the ocean, as long as it maintains its individuality, will feel separate from other waves. If then it then feels superior, inferior, depressed, elated, honored, insulted, and so on. Knowing itself to be water, all differences end. The supreme state of oneness is devoid of ego. Even at the empirical level, it is seen that all disputes at the family, society, national, and international levels are because of ego. The Gita enumerates three kinds of vision of men as the lower kind, tamasika, wherein a part is considered to be the whole. Such people become fanatics and insist that their viewpoint alone is right. The medium kind, rajasic, partial knowledge or vision of difference alone is taken to be real. The best kind, sattvic, in spite of experience of differences, there is a vision of oneness. This is the vision that unites man, man to nature, and man to God. Fifth verse. Bhagavan now elaborates upon the role of discussion in perceiving the truth. Satyam Rushava Shididam Jadam Dukkham Sukham Veti Mudha Vivadah Adrishtaloka Niraham Pratitihi Nishtha Vikalpa Paramakhileshta. Arguments that this is real or false, sentient or inert, sorrow or joy, are to no purpose. The state free from all thoughts, without I notion, and the world is the supreme state desired by all. A discussion among equals is in order to arrive at the truth or a conclusion is called Vada. An argument where the ego is at play is called Vivada. Here, each tries to outwit the other and display his own knowledge. When people with different views argue just to prove that they are right is called Jalpa. Neither is interested in knowing the truth. When a person having no particular viewpoint argues only to prove the other person wrong, it is called Vitanda. When a master tries to indicate his vision of the truth to his disciples, it is called Samvada. Vivada, Jalpa, and Vitanda are futile in gaining any knowledge. The ego only gets bloated or pricked. Hence, Adi Shankaracharya too says, refrain from false arguments. Dustarkat suviramyatam. Sadhana Panchakam 3. Vada and Samvada play an important role in gaining spiritual knowledge. But when discussions become mere intellectual exercises or dialogues or brainwashing, they are futile. Vada or Samvada should initiate true inquiry which culminates in realization. Scholastic arguments are hypothetical drawing room discussions about the world and the cause of the world as real or unreal, sentient or insentient, sorrow or joy are in vain. Vivek Chudamani, verse number 59, states, study of scriptures too, which does not result in experience of the truth, is fruitless. Avidnyate pare tatve shastradhitistu nishphala. The desired end of all discussions is to dissolve the world under discussion and the one who is in discussion into a non-dual state free from doubts. Herein, one realizes that the cause of the world is sentient, and happiness, Satchit Ananda, which is experienced at the empirical level as unreal, inert, and full of limitations. All of us seek a state where there is no experience of this problematic world, nor the problem maker or experiencer, the I. Sleep is therefore most desired. We try to go into this state in many other ways also. The Tamasika man takes to drugs and drinks to forget himself. The Sattvic man loses himself in singing the glories of the Lord. Such induced states are short lived and they leave the person with more problems. However, with true vision, he remains always in the blissful state. We have all seen pictures of various forms of the Lord as Sri Ram or Sri Krishna. We have heard his glories sung by saints and have also heard that he is formless, nameless, and attributeless. A doubt naturally arises in the mind whether the Lord is with or without form and attributes. Bhagawan answers. स्वरूपबुद्धिर्जगतीश्वरे च स्वरूपधीरात्मनि यावदस्ति अरूपात्मा यदि कः प्रपश्येत् सा दृष्टिरेका नवधीर्हि पूर्णा. As long as there is an understanding that I am with form, that is, I am the body, there will be the idea about the world and the Lord that they too have form. If the self is without form, who will see? That vision is indeed one, limitless and complete. We have seen that our vision of the world is colored by many factors, the main being what we are identified with. The question is not whether the Lord and the world are with or without form. We will only see the Lord and the world as we see ourselves. So I ask, am I formless or without form? Presently, identified with the body and mind, I feel I am with a name, form, and attributes. That is, I am Mr. So and so, tall, fair, and dashing. Then, in my vision, the Lord can only be with form, even though in reality he is without form. Remaining identified with the body, any concept of a formless truth is also another superimposed form. Since formlessness is not an attribute of the truth, for example, we say space is all pervading, our concept of all pervading is also limited. All pervading cannot be conceptualized. Similarly, to understand formlessness as a thought of the mind is really not to understand the formless truth. In my understanding of the world too, the maturity of my vision determines my world. A superficial or insensitive mind cannot appreciate deeper thoughts or emotions. As we rise above our limited pettiness and body identification, our vision of truth changes. With the elimination of the ego, we gain a vision which is limitless and complete. Sri Hanuman, elaborating on his relation with Sri Ram, says, identified with the body, I am thy servant. As an individual, I am thy part. But as the pure self, we are one. This is my firm conviction. देहबुद्ध्या तु दासोऽहं जीवबुद्ध्या त्वदंशकः आत्मबुद्ध्या त्वमेवाहम् इति मे निश्चिता मतिः. Who thereafter remains separate from the scene to pursue the formless truth. The next three verses explain how we experience this world of plurality. यत्पञ्चकोशात्मकदेहं यत्पञ्चकोशात्मकमस्ति देहं तदन्तरा किं भुवनं चकास्ति देहं विना पञ्चविधं तदेतत् पश्यन्ति केवा भुवनं भणन्तु. Apart from the body made up of five sheets, does the world shine? Let people explain. Without that fivefold body, who can perceive this world? Here, the word body is not limited to the physical body alone, but all five sheets. The grossest one is the food sheath, Annamaya Kosha, which we perceive as the gross body. It is the modification of the food that we eat. The vital air sheet, Pranamaya Kosha, consists of the five physiological functions: breathing, excretion, circulation, digestion, and reverse processes, vomiting, sneezing, etc. And the five organs of action: speech, hands, legs, genital organs, and anus. The mental sheath, Manomaya Kosh, is constituted of the mind and the five sense organs of perception, ability to see, hear, smell, taste, and feel. The intellectual sheath, Vijnanamaya Kosha, is made up of the intellect and the sense organs of perception. The bliss sheath, Anandamaya Kosha, is the unmanifest inherent tendencies, vasanas, and the ignorance of the self. Starting from the food sheath, each is subtler than the other. These five sheaths function together to give us the experience of the world. Without the vital air or the mind, the body would become fit only for the funeral pyre. Also, one sheath by itself cannot give us any experience. The world would not exist for us but for the body. Even if it existed, who would be there to experience it? We thus understand that the world is only experienced as interpreted by this fivefold body. A beam of light passing through a prism is seen to have seven colors. Similarly, the body creates this illusion of plurality in the world. What is this world that we experience? Shabdadirupam bhuvanam samastam Shabdadisattendriya vrittibhasya Sattendriyanam manaso vashe syat Manomayam tat bhuvanam vadamaha. The entire world is of the form of sound, etc. The existence of sound, etc. is illumined by the functions of the sense organs. The existence of the sense organs is in the control of the mind. Therefore, we say that the world is made up of the mind. This vast universe has countless objects. They are experienced by us as sound, feeling, form, color, taste, and smell. Hence, Vedanta says that the world has only five sense objects. These five are experienced through the activity of the five sense organs of perception. For instance, were it not for the tongue, life would be tasteless. Now, the senses function only because of the mind backing it. Prompted by the mind alone, the senses go to the sense objects. For instance, desire in the mind prompts us to go see a movie. The senses depend on the mind for their existence and functioning. For example, a distracted mind cannot perceive these words even if the eyes stare at them. The mind has the capacity to give us an experience of the sense object. For instance, a hungry person starts smelling food even if in the absence of food. So, the entire world is experienced only as thought modifications or the projection of the mind. Such a statement is staggering in its implications. It means that my friends and enemies, joys and sorrows, fears and hopes, successes and failures are mind projected. I cannot therefore complain about the world. We do realize that the world appears beautiful when one is in a good mood and tyrannical when one is depressed. We are not ready to believe that the sun, moon, stars, mountains, or rivers are only in my mind and have no existence apart from it. We usually ask, what happens to them when one goes to sleep? Do they too disappear? To explain this, Vedanta postulates the concept of total mind or Ishwar. The cosmos, Ishwar Srishti, is the projection of the total mind, and one's individual likes and dislikes are so on are one's projection, Jiva Srishti. The fact, however, remains that the world is a projection of the mind, whether individual or total. In other words, the world is thought modifications. Concluding the thought started in verse 7, Bhagawan goes to the root of the mind. धिया सहोदेति धिया तमेस्ति लोकस्ततोधि प्रविभासेषा धीलोकजन्माक्षयधामपूर्णा सद्वस्तु जन्मक्षयशून्यमेकम्. This world arises and sets with the I thought. Therefore, this world is illumined by the I thought. The reality is the abode of the birth and death of the I thought and the world. It is one complete and without birth and decay. In verse 8, we concluded that the world is nothing but the mind. Now we inquire what is the mind, what the mind is. The mind is the continuous flow of thoughts, good, bad, or indifferent. Every thought in turn is experienced due to the I thought illumining it. One thought cannot illumine another thought, both being inert. The I thought is endowed with the reflection of consciousness, Chidabhasa, hence illumines the thought of objects, this thought. It arises with the thought and sets with it. In fact, without the experience of I am, there is no experience as I am so and so. Thereafter, we experience the world. I know this is a book. I am and I know as though accompany each thought. This thought changes with the objects perceived, but the I thought remains the same. Hence, mind is the continuous flow of the I thought. Now we may ask, from where does the I thought arise? Into what does it disappear along with the world it illumines? Abundance in this origin of the I thought is the abundance in reality. This origin is without birth and death. Being free from any modifications, it is eternal, complete, and infinite. This truth is realized as at the seat of meditation, when one slowly shifts one's attention from the sound of a mantra to the thought of it, and finally to the void between the thoughts of the or the origin of the thought. On knowing this truth, thoughts are understood as disturbances in reality. Waves arise and fall in the ocean, but the water is free from death and birth and death. In fact, the water alone appears as the waves. If inquiry is the direct path to Saddarshan, what is the relevance of spiritual practices like puja or japa? The verse explains. भवन्तु सद्दर्शनसाधनानि परस्य नामाकृतिभिः सपर्याः सद्वस्तुनि प्राप्त तदात्मभावा निष्ठैव सद्दर्शनमित्यवेहि. Let the worship of the names and forms of the Supreme be means to the vision of truth. Know that abidance in the reality, as it is me alone, is the vision of truth. The discrimination of the means and the goals, sadhana, sadhya, vivek, is important for a spiritual seeker. If the means are mistaken for the end or vice versa, then there is trouble. For example, money is the means to buy objects of pleasure. Happiness is the goal. When collecting money and objects become the goal of life, happiness is left far behind. If I ask, what is the use of knowing the truth? Then, knowing the truth, the actual goal, becomes the means. Its use becomes the goal. Only a pure, subtle, and steady mind can conduct true inquiry leading to the vision of truth. Therefore, various spiritual practices are prescribed in different religions by different masters and different scriptures for different students as means to purify and concentrate the mind. For a student whose mind is already well prepared, spiritual practices are superfluous. For the majority of us, with likes, dislikes, and distractions, inquiry is impossible. The Lord is all love, beauty, compassion, divine peace, and so on. As the mind moves towards the Supreme, thoughts of divinity permeate the mind and make it pure and serene. So, practices like japa, puja, and pranayam are advocated. It is not necessary to practice all these simultaneously or sequentially. The desired end is achieved with sincere practice of any one or more of them. Thereafter, they may be dropped. For example, the car is given up on reaching the airport. The mind is ready for the flight within once it is pure. The unthinking man feels that he is spiritual just because he does japa or visits the temple daily. The fanatic says, my path alone leads to salvation, and my God alone saves. He has not understood that the worship of the name and form of the Lord and following a particular path are only means to purify the mind, and this can well be achieved by other ways. Sanatan Dharma therefore gives each the freedom to adopt his own means suitable to his own inclinations. The goal, however, is abundance in the self. In this state, there are no means or the distinction of means and goal, for the seeker has become one with the sought. This is Saddarshan. A mind purified by spiritual practices is fit for inquiry. Bhagawan initiates the seeker on the path of knowledge through different exercises in inquiry. द्वन्द्वानि सर्वाण्यखिलास्त्रिपुट्यः किञ्चित् समाश्रित्य विभान्ति वस्तु तन्मार्गणे स्याद्गलितं समस्तं न पश्यतां सच्चलनं कदापि. All pairs of opposites and all triads shine, taking the support of some entity. When that is searched, all will get dropped. To them who see the truth, there is never any wavering. The world is a strange combination of opposites, the yin and the yang, the positive and the negative. Most of us are rocked constantly by the ups and downs of life. These pairs of opposites come as joys and sorrows, heat and cold, success and failure, profit and loss, birth and death, honor and dishonor, or praise and censure. When joy comes, we are on cloud 9, and when sorrow comes, we are down in the dumps. Also, in every experience, there is a triad, the seer, the seen, and the seeing, knower, known, and the knowing, speaker, spoken, and the speaking, writer, written, and writing. We inquire, on what do the pairs of opposites and the triads depend for their existence? All opposites are interdependent, that is, each is understood only with reference to the other. The division amongst them is not distinct. When asked, "Are you happy?" some answer, "Sort of." The pairs of opposites are not watertight experiences and seem to merge at an indistinct point. But without the experience of the I, there is neither joy nor sorrow. Also, without I, the seer, there is no seeing or seeing. Going to the root of the I, the pairs of opposites and triads disappear in the vision of truth. Thereafter, man is no more perturbed by them, even when they reappear as mountain-like sorrows. Yasmin sthito na dukkhena gurunapi vichalyate. Gita 6.22. If one is on the earth, one has to keep moving around the sun. When one merges with the sun, there is no movement. Many seeming tragedies came at regular intervals to Bhagavan Shri Krishna. Never falling from his nature, Achyuta, he smiled away at life. The author himself guides us through an example on how to conduct inquiry into the nature of the pairs of opposites. Vidya katham bhati na cheda vidya vidyam vina kim pravibhatya vidya द्वयं च कस्येति विचार्य मूलं स्वरूपनिष्ठा परमार्थविद्या. If there is no ignorance, how does knowledge shine? Without knowledge, does ignorance shine? And whose are the two? Thus, having inquired abundance in the original nature, is the knowledge of the truth. As mentioned in the previous verse, all pairs of opposites are interdependent. Without the concept of knowledge, who would know of ignorance or vice versa? A man is called knowledgeable only in comparison with an ignorant man. The knowledgeable one in turn appears ignorant in front of one who has more knowledge. Hence, they are relative terms. Also, I have to know my ignorance, and then alone do I seek knowledge. Ignorance and knowledge are related to an object. I have ignorance of a computer or knowledge of Vedanta. As there are innumerable objects in the world, both ignorance and knowledge of them are limitless. It is known that the more we know, the less we feel that we know. So, ignorance and knowledge of various objects seem to coexist in us. But to have ignorance and knowledge of the same object simultaneously is not possible. One may, however, have partial knowledge of an object. Ignorance of an object is beginningless, but ends in knowledge. Knowledge has a beginning, but is endless. One may, however, forget one's knowledge and appear ignorant. Knowledge thought negates the ignorance thought. Knowledge alone dispels ignorance, like light dispels darkness. Vidya avidyam nihantyeva tejassa timira sanghavat. Atmabodh, verse 3. So we understand that knowledge and ignorance are both thoughts in the mind related to objects in the world. Both are relative and interdependent. We then ask, to whom do both belong? Who is ignorant? Who is knowledgeable? From where do both thoughts arise? Who supports them? Into what do they merge? Thus, inquiring, we come to the pure self, which is absolute knowledge, knowledge free from the thoughts of ignorance and knowledge. The inquiry into a triad is conducted thus. Buddharamatmanamajanato yo bodhassa kim syat paramartha bodha bodhasya bodhyasya cha samshrayam swam vijanatastad dvitayam vinashet. Can that be true knowledge when the knower does not know himself? To one who knows oneself, the support of knowledge and the object of knowledge, the two will vanish. A simple sentence contains a subject, an object, and a predicate, showing the relation between the two. Similarly, every experience has a triad of the knower, the object to be known, and the act of knowing. The knower is connected to the object through a thought in the mind, which we call as knowledge of the object. This knowledge takes place when the knower, the mind, senses, and the object are in coordination. Here we question the validity of such knowledge. The knower, not knowing himself, knows X, Y, and Z. Can such knowledge be true knowledge? When a man is intoxicated, he loses touch with himself, and we say that he is not in his senses. We do not give any value to the words of wisdom or stupidity spoken by him in that state. We dismiss them, saying that he does not know what he is saying. He has lost touch with reality as he does not even know who he is. Also, the words of a lunatic are ignored, and his claim of being the king of all his surveys is laughed at. This we say from the plane of knowing ourselves as human beings, and the world as real. Similarly, from the standpoint of the absolute reality, all our claims of knowledge are not given much validity, as we really do not know who we are. Adi Shankaracharya says, man drunk with the wine of delusion, Maya Madira, struts around thinking himself to be knowledgeable. The realized saint therefore ignores, forgets, and forgives, and does not feel praised or insulted by the words and affections of an ignorant person. Who then is the knower? The object to be known is known through a thought of knowledge. The thought arises due to the act of knowing. The act of knowing and the thought are supported by me. I exist, therefore I think, not I think, therefore I exist. Hence, the known and the knowing exist because of me. On knowing the knower, the known and the knowing merge into me. The status of being a knower is assumed by me only with reference to the act of knowing. But when the knowing and known merge into me, there is nothing left to be known. The notion of knowership too ends. This is Saddarshan. The Upanishads talk of self knowledge as the knowledge by knowing which all is known, and without knowing which all is ignorance alone. When dualities and triads end, there seems to be a void. Is that the reality? Nidra na vidya grahanam na vidya grannati kinchinna yathartha bodhi निद्रा पदार्थ ग्रहणेतरास्याच्चिदेव विद्या विलसन्त्य शून्या. Sleep is not knowledge. Perception of objects is not knowledge. In the knowledge as it is, one does not hold anything. True knowledge is other than sleep and the perception of objects. It is awareness alone, shining, not a void. Deep sleep is a state most desired by all, as there is no experience of dualities or triads. On waking, we all say, I slept well, I was happy, and I did not know anything. When deep sleep is interrupted by a dream or waking states, we generally call it a bad sleep. But one cannot truly have a bad deep sleep. In sleep, there is bliss but pure ignorance. The fact that we remember the experience on waking shows the presence of the experiencer. Since the instruments through which we experience are not in use, no objects are perceived. Thus, the non perception of objects is the continuous experience of deep sleep. Sleep has the thought of the idea of object, absence, abhava pratyaya alambana vritti nidra. Yoga Sutra 10. In the dream state, the objects are projected by the mind, and in the waking state, the objects in the world are perceived. So, perception of objects is the experience of these two states. Such perceptions, relative knowledge, are useful for transaction in the waking state, but cannot give us true happiness. In all the three states, the knower I remains unknown. We are actually asleep or in ignorance of our nature even when we move around in the world, achieving success and so on. The sleepwalker may walk about here and there, but he is really in sleep. The realized master, on the other hand, having known his true nature, which is other than the three states, is ever awake. Shri Krishna says, in that which is night, ignorance for all beings, the man of self control is awake to his nature. That to which all beings are awake, the world, is like night to the realized man. या निशा सर्वभूतानां तस्यां जागर्ति संयमी यस्यां जागृति भूतानि सा निशा पश्यतो मुनेः. Gita 2.69. Such a state where the sun of knowledge is ever shining is definitely not a void. The relation between the knowledge principle Chit and the knowledge of objects is shown in the following verse. Satyashchidatma vividhakrutischet siddhet pruthak satyachito na vinna bhusha vikarah kimusanti satyam vina suvarnam pruthagatra loke. The consciousness, that is the self, is the truth. The knowledge, which is of various forms, is neither different nor can it exist without consciousness. Here in the world, can the various gold ornaments exist without gold? Fire is of the nature of heat and light. Heat cannot totally be without light. The light totally without heat. And there would be no fire without both. Yet heat is not light. The self is of the nature of existence Sat and consciousness Chit. Here, however, existence is consciousness. If consciousness were separate from existence, it would become inert. If existence were different from consciousness, existence consciousness is not an attribute of the self, but existence consciousness is the self. Various gold ornaments have different names: necklace, nose ring, earring, bracelet, anklet. Forms round, flat, sizes small, large, weight light, heavy, value in terms of money, sentiments, and uses, investment, decoration, or earring. Yet all are in essence gold alone. The names and forms are many, but gold is one. Without gold, none would exist. Gold alone appears as various forms without undergoing any intrinsic change. The names and forms are only superimpositions on gold. Similarly, existence consciousness self alone is experienced as knowledge or thought modifications or the world of plurality. The plurality is a mere appearance and has no existence apart from the self. For example, the sunlight alone, due to the defect of my vision, appears as the mirage water. The sunlight never undergoes any intrinsic change, never flows, nor feels weight. What does the existence of others mean to me? It is said, तद्युष्मदोरस्मदिसम्प्रतिष्ठा तस्मिन् विनष्टे स्मदि मूलबोधात् तद्युष्मदस्मन्मतिवर्जितैका स्थितिर्ज्वलन्ती सहजात्मनः That and thou are based firmly in I, from the knowledge of their origin. When that I has perished, for one without the notion of that, thou and I, that natural state of oneness that is shining, will emerge. In the grammar of every language, we study about the first person I, second person you, and the third person as he, she, or it. The first person I is the very basis of you, he, she, or it. However selfless I may be, I is the very center of my world. This I is never known to me as you, he, she, or it. To me, you are you, and to you, I am you. The relations of you, he, she, or it are not absolute but depend on I. The concepts of this and that are also only with reference to I. This is something closer and seen, and that farther away and unseen. But it is I alone that gives existence to both. This becomes that and vice versa, with a change in my position or with reference to each other. For example, that table and this book, but that book and this hand that hold the book, but I becomes neither this or that. When one inquires into the origin of I, all concepts of alertness, otherness, you, she, this, that disappear. I alone shine in my true glory. Only with reference to another do I become a brother, friend, or so on. But in my most natural state of being, there is no becoming. Now we shall spend some time thinking about time. भूतं भविष्यच्च भवत्स्वकाले तद्वर्तमानस्य विहाय तत्त्वं हास्यानु किं स्यात् गतभाविचर्चा विनैकसंख्यां गणनेव लोके. The past and the future are in their own time the present. Giving up the truth of that present, will not discussion on the past and the future be laughable, like counting without the number one in the world? Time is known to be to us as the past, present, and the future. The past is the past, and the future only with reference to the present. The past, when it happened, was the present, and the future, when it happens, will also be the present. The future takes its own time to come, and the past is already gone. The present alone is in our hands. All actions are possible only in the present. Even if planned, in the past to give results in the future. So, the essence of time is the present, without which there is no past or future. For example, without 0, there would be no concept of -1 or a +1. The future comes towards the present to pass away as the past. The future never comes as the future. So we say tomorrow never comes. The past too never returns. It may be relived through memory or repetition of actions, but that is never new. Only the present is ever fresh and new. Therefore, all beauty is only in the present. Beauty is that which is ever new. Kalidas. Unfortunately, most of us live most of the time with memories in the past or hopes for the future, missing out on the essence of time and life. Time is spent in discussion about the influence of the past on the present and future trends, and money is spent in seeking predictions about the unknown future and means to improve future chances. An unsteady mind slips back into the past or drifts into the future. Swami Ramatirtha says, all time is now, all space is here, uh, all space here, problems solved, solutions clear. All time is now, all space here, problems solved, solutions clear. What then is the present? We talk of the present century, decade, year, month, week, day, hour, minute, and second. We find that each can be further divided into smaller units. The second too can be subdivided into microseconds and so on till we experience the present actually disappearing into a mere presence or existence, which is the truth of time. The concepts of the past, present, and future are known to be superimpositions on the timeless truth. The Lord is thus called by the names Kalatma, essence of time, Kalatita, one beyond time, and Trikaladnya, knower of the three periods of time. Again, the present is defined as a dot in the line of time. The past stretches towards infinity away from this dot, and the future comes towards the dot from infinity. A dot is dimensionless. The present, therefore, is immeasurable, its truth infinite. There is no experience of time without events. So, time is defined as the interval between events. The interval being eventless is timeless. Therefore, the essence of time is timeless. Time is a subjective concept. When we are happy, time flies, and when unhappy, every second seems a lifetime. When we are young, the future lies ahead. When we retire, we live in the past. The so called objective time based on the movement of the earth is only valid for a particular system. It is also not absolute in our system, as after every few hundred years, international watches have to be set right. To give absolute reality to this relative time is not to know the truth of time. Counting begins with the number 1. 1 is present in all numbers. So also is the truth of time, which is itself timeless, eternal, and underlines the past, present, and future. Now we give place to the thought of time and space. Kubhati dikkal katha vinasman dikkal lile havapurvayam chet न क्वापि भामो न कदापि भामो वयं तु सर्वत्र सदा च भामः. Without us, where does the top of space and time appear? If we are the body, then there will be the place of space and time. Nowhere do we shine, at no time do we appear, but everywhere and at all time do we shine. Space is that which accommodates. Directions are superimposed in space as north, south, right, left, front, back, and so on. With reference to this body, directions are not absolute. To one in Japan, India is west, and to one in US, India is east. All objects are in space. Space is measured with reference to objects as in distance. For example, space between two milestones is a mile. Large distances are measured in terms of time as light years. Space again is a subjective concept. To one living in a palace, an urban flat seems small, and to one from the slums, it is spacious. Space is a thought in the mind. As we live in a spaceless world in deep sleep, thus without identification with this fivefold body, there is no existence of space. As discussed in the previous verse, like space, time too is a subjective or relative concept which exists as a thought in the mind. It has existence only when we identify with the body. When I come to know that I am not the body, then where is the concept of time and space? I am timeless and spaceless, so I do not exist in time and space, but these concepts exist in me as superimpositions. When the first thought was not, I was there to illuminate its absence. When it happened, I witnessed its appearance and disappearance. I also witnessed the appearance of the second thought, thus becoming aware of the interval between the two thoughts. Hence, the concept of time as the interval between the thoughts exists in me. Interestingly, the unit of time is second, as its concept arises only with the second thought. Here, there, nowhere, everywhere are all space concepts. Being beyond space, I am here, there, nowhere, and yet everywhere. Now, then, never, ever are time concepts. Being beyond time, I am now, was then, never was, yet ever am. The enlightened sage seems no different from any ignorant man in his day to day activities. then where lies the difference? देहात्मभावेज्ञजडौ समानौ एकस्य देहे हृदि दीप्तात्मा आक्रम्य देहं च जगच्च पूर्णः परस्य मेयं तनुमात्रमात्मा. In the state of oneself being the body, the wise man and the ignorant man are the same. But for one, in the heart, in the body, the self is lit up full, encompassing the body and the world. For the other, the self is measurable only as the body. Is the enlightened sage distinguishable by a halo around his head? Would he eat, sleep, watch TV, or would he be ever immersed in contemplation? Would he recognize if we address him by a name, or would he know himself only as the pure self? Such questions do arise in the mind of a new initiate. In this verse, an ignorant man does not mean an illiterate person. One who does not know his true nature is called ignorant. To the majority of us, the I notion rests firmly in the body alone, as I am fat, Brahmin, unemployed, and so on. If the body is unhealthy, I am unhealthy. Any honor or dishonor to the body is my honor or dishonor. Living as the body, I feel helpless, hopeless, or sleepless. The enlightened man knows himself to be the pure self shining within the heart in the body. Gita 5.13 states, I live in this city of 9 gates, neither acting nor making others act. Navadvare pure dehi naiva kurvanna karayan. Gita 3.27 also says, it is the qualities of Prakriti that do all the actions. Prakritek kriyamanani gunek karmani sarvashaha. How can I, the witness, be bound by such actions? I do not just live in the body, but pervade the body and the entire world. I am the self of all, immeasurable and infinite. I am not in the body, but the body is in me. Actually, there is no duality of me and the body. I alone appear as the body. Such is the experience of the wise man. Interestingly, the ignorant man says, I am the body alone. The seeker says, I am not the body, but the self illuminating this inert body. The wise man says, I am the body and everything within and without. Adi Shankaracharya says, just as a clay pot is pervaded by clay, the body too is pervaded by consciousness. Yathaiva mrunmayo kumbha tadvat dehopi chinmayah. Aparokshanubhuti 69. Knowing thus, the wise man lives in this world as the body. Hence, he too is seen to feel hunger, sleep, pain, and have disease, as does any normal body. From his daily activities, he does not seem different from anyone else, but his vision is totally different. He has no attachment to the body and craving for things related to the body. What is the attitude of the wise man towards this world of objects and beings, which for us is solidly real? अज्ञस्य विज्ञस्य च विश्वमस्ति पूर्वस्य दृश्यं जगदेव सत्यं परस्य दृश्याश्रयभूतमेकं सत्यं प्रपूर्णं प्रविभात्यरूपम्. The world exists for the ignorant and the wise man. To the former, the seen world alone is real. To the other, the one that has become the substratum of the seen, the full, formless truth shines. The ignorant man takes the world at its face value and gives absolute reality to all his experiences. To him, thinking about the truth of the world and life is to worry about how to earn a living, mourn at his fate, and bemoan the prevalent corruption. He is so immersed with his thoughts that the vision of the wise seems otherwise and impractical. He wants to get rid of sorrow by increasing his bank balance and changing his job. He does not have time for getting to the root of the problem. To the wise, the world is unreal and ever changing. The substratum upon which this world appears is the real eternal truth. The reality has no names or forms, is full and infinite. For example, a child gets so involved in a movie that he cries and laughs in the scenes as the scenes change. The mature man may laugh, but he knows that the names and forms are unreal. The screen alone was, is, and will remain. When the movie is over, the lights and sounds are all projections. The actor never forgets that he is acting the tragic role of the widower, or is not actually, and he is not actually one. He enjoys a masterly acted cry and the applause that follows. Similarly, for the wise man, the world is a stage where the drama of life goes on. He also assumes a role and enjoys the act and wonders why others are not enjoying. In fact, it is he alone who enjoys. Others are only trying to or appearing to enjoy. The favorite question with many is the place of destiny and self-effort in our life. Bhagavan gets to the root of it in this verse. विधेः प्रयत्नस्य च कोऽपि वादः तयोर्द्वयोर्मूलमजानतां स्यात्. विधेः प्रयत्नस्य च मूलवस्तु सञ्जानतां नैव विधिर्न यत्नः. It is possible to talk of fate and self-effort for them who know not the source of the two. To them who know well the source of fate and effort, there is neither fate nor effort. Fate is known variously as luck, chance, or destiny, prarabdha. It is what comes to us in the present as circumstances, whether good or bad. The fruits of actions done in the past come as fate when they mature. Self-effort is what we do in the present with what we get. When we remove the conditioning of time, we see that both are actions alone. One is action done in the past giving result now, and the other is action done in the present which will give result in the future. All actions depend on I, the doer of actions. The root question to be asked is, who am I? In the answer to that, there remains neither fate nor effort. Again, fate as we see it depends on self effort. Effort depends on the desire to act. Desire depends on I, the desirer. Who then am I on whom depends desire, effort, and fate? Also, it was seen that fate and effort are only actions, and actions depend on the doer of actions. One becomes the doer of actions only when with reference to the actions. We ask, who am I before the action started and after the action is over? Surely I am not the doer. The doer alone becomes the enjoyer. Being neither, where is the question of fate or self effort in me? One may argue that fate depends on self effort, but self effort itself depends on fate. So fate is all powerful. We ask, does not fate again depends on self effort, which in turn depends, and so on, regress ad infinitum? The only way out is to go to the origin of both. What is the role of fate and self effort in the life of a realized soul? Action is done with the body. The actor is the wielder of the body. If I am neither the body nor its wielder, but the witnessing consciousness of both, how can actions or the results incurred thereof affect me? Knowing thus, he may live in life full of activity or otherwise, depending on his inclinations. He accepts all circumstances as the destiny that his body or mind has to undergo. Remaining on the empirical plane, we insist on knowing whether fate or effort should dominate our life. Many factors govern actions. Profound is the way of action. Gahana karmano gatihi. Gita 4.17. To understand the total field of actions and results is difficult for man. To talk of actions of an individual without the effect of totality on him is not complete. However, one can understand that both fate and destiny have a role in life. Only the present is in our hands, and all actions are possible only in the present. Also, what is done cannot be undone instantly. However, we may in time change totally or modify what we get with effort. We cannot blame anyone for our fate, as it is the result of our own past actions. We should not complain about what we get and wait for times to change. If we live dynamically in the present, our present becomes a joy and the future would surely be brighter. Many claim to have seen the Lord. Sri Raman Mahashi explains what is true Ishwar Darshan. यदीशितुर्वीक्षणमीक्षितारम् अन्वीक्ष तन्मानसिके क्षणं स्यात् न द्रष्टुरन्यः परमो हि तस्य वीक्षा स्वमूले प्रविलीय निष्ठा. That vision of the Lord which is without seeing the seer can only be a mental vision. Indeed, the Supreme is not other than the seer. His vision is the absorption and abidance in one's own source. The Lord is, in His true nature, is nameless, formless, attributeless, infinite, and all-pervading. The entire world is an appearance on Him. It is His total mind projection. This form of the Lord as the cosmos is known as the Virat Rupa or cosmic form. The Lord can and does assume a particular form according to the need of the moment or as sport. Such a form is called an avatar like Sri Rama or Sri Krishna. When a devotee meditates with full faith and love upon a particular form over a period of time, his mind gets absorbed and enchanted and he starts yearning for his vision. His meditation intensifies and results in the vision of the desired divine form, sport, or abode. He may also experience divine sounds, feelings, or fragrance. Such experiences purify his mind, besides increasing his faith and devotion. Thereafter, the devotee desires nothing of the world and wants to ever remain with the Lord. Such a vision is not easy to get. However, it is not the absolute vision, as the Lord is not known in His true nature. It is a temporary vision, a mental projection due to past impressions, sanskaras. The scene is limited by time, space, and objects. The Lord is infinite, so He cannot be seen. He is not different from the seer. Hence, the true vision of the Lord is to know Him as oneself. One sees God as one's self. Saddarshanam Svatma Rupata. Upadeshasar 25. Such a vision is absolute and never lost. The realized one, for the sake of worship, may still assume separateness from the Lord, or may revel in singing the glories of His attributes and sports, or may meditate on His form. Such worship does not negate His true vision. In fact, it gives him more joy. How can one then have the vision of the self or the vision of the Lord as the self? आत्मानमीक्षेत परं प्रपश्येत इत्यागमोक्ते सुलभो न भावः नात्मैव दृश्यो यदि का कथेशे स्वयं तदन्नीभवनं तदीक्षा. The meaning of the sayings of the Vedas, one should see the self, one should see the Lord, is not easy. If the self itself is not seen, then what can be the talk of the Lord? The vision of Him is oneself becoming food unto Him. The Brihadaranyaka Upanishad 2.4.5 says, one should know the self, Atma Vare Drashtavyah. Also, one should know the Supreme. These simple words may be superficially appreciated, but are difficult to grasp in their full import, at times influenced by others or within a glamour attached to such seeking, or for want of something better to do, or to be unusual, or due to worldly disappointments, we seem to be interested in matters spiritual. We understand that self realization or the Lord should be the goal of life, but still our desires for objects and beings of the world continue. Even if we are fairly detached, the habit of the mind to objectify everything makes it seek the self or the Lord too as an object. We try to gain self realization as an experience of the mind. The self, being one with the seeker, cannot be seen as an object either by the senses or the mind. We all experience the self within as I, aparokshataya. We, however, do not know our true nature, so we take the ego to be me. It is I alone who is to know the Lord. When I am unable to abide in my true nature, the talk of knowing the Lord is far fetched. We know from the previous verse that the vision of the Lord is to know Him as the Self. Here, Bhagawan indicates a method that would appeal to the heart of one with devotion for the Lord. During puja or worship, we make food offerings to the Lord. The Lord is supposed to have eaten the essence of the food, the love, bhava behind the offering. The food, therefore, thereafter becomes the prasad, a gift from Him. Here it is said that instead of food, we should offer ourselves, that is our ego, at His altar. Food eaten becomes one with the eater. The Lord, as though, eats my ego, and I lose my identity in Him. He alone remains. This is the vision of the Lord. Normally, in the world, I am the enjoyer, bhokta, and the food objects of the world are the enjoyed bhogya. Many times, I become the bhogya for others to maintain my status as a bhokta. For example, when I wish that people look at me, I dress with extra care, thereby wishing to enjoy their appreciation. This may misfire and I may become an object of ridicule. Then instead of being an enjoyer, I become a sufferer. Yet I remain a bhokta in my suffering of my suffering. Here we are advised to become the bhogya, not of the world, but of the Lord, by totally giving up the status of being the bhokta. The Lord is infinite, He is all. Being limited, my vision of Him will always be limited. Being all, one sees all. Sarvasan Sarvam Pashyati. This is called seeing the Lord. A technique of meditation on the self to gain the vision of the Supreme is shown. धिये प्रकाशं परमो वितीर्य स्वयं धियोऽन्तः प्रविभाति गुप्तः धियं परावर्ति धियोऽन्तरेऽत्र संयोजनान्नेश्वरदृष्टिरन्या. The Supreme, having distributed light to the intellect, Himself shines hidden inside the intellect. Having turned the intellect inwards, here within the intellect, by uniting the vision of the Lord takes place not by any other method. The mind, through the senses, finds fulfillment in enjoying the world of names and forms, and so it prompts the body into action. When such satisfaction is not obtained, it feels frustrated and depressed. Still, it does not give up its extroverted nature of seeking joy in objects. Our senses are by nature extrovert, therefore, they see the objects outside, not the self within. Some rare person desiring eternity, changing his direction of perception, sees his own self. पराञ्चिखानि व्यतृणत् स्वयम्भूस्तस्मात् परां पश्यति नान्तरात्मन् कश्चित् धीरा प्रत्यगात्मानमैक्षत् आवृत्य चक्षुः अमृतत्वमिच्छन् Kathopanishad 3.1.1. A rare individual may start the inquiry thus: what is the light by which my mind has the capacity to perceive objects? The mind is a flow of thoughts, and the thoughts themselves are inert. Then what makes the mind appear sentient? The self is of the nature of pure consciousness. It is reflected in the thought, leading them sentiency. This sentient mind is in turn illumines objects. The self, as though, hides within the thought on giving it sentiency. If one wants to see the self, one must shift the attention of one's mind from the objects to the thought illumining the objects, and from the illumined thought to the pure consciousness. This consciousness is experienced where the mind appears. For example, a bulb by itself has no light. It is the illumined filament that gives it the capacity to illumine objects. The filament itself has no light. It is the electrical current which brings the glow to the filament. The current is not seen. It as though hides behind the illumined filament. If one wishes to see electricity, one would have to stop looking at the objects illumined by the filament and contact the filament itself. There would be an instant realization of the truth. The next 3 verses give detailed description of the ego, the I notion, which is the root of all problems. न वक्ति देहो हमिति प्रसुप्तो न कोऽपि नाभूवमिति प्रवक्ति यत्रोदिते सर्वमुदेति तस्य धिया हमशोधय जन्मदेशम्. The body does not say I am. Nobody says I was not in deep sleep. Search with your intellect the birthplace of that I, upon whose rise everything rises. The body is made up of the gross 5 elements: space, air, fire, water, and earth. None of them individually or when put together declare I am. Without the I notion, no experience is possible. So the body never experiences anything. For example, my little finger has never protested being little, and the thumb has never thought of dieting. It is I who experience my body, and through my body the world outside. For example, I know my body is fat and feels cold. Then, is the I notion the mind? It cannot be, as I know my mind. I know the knower is different from my mind, the known. Then, who is this I that wields this mind and the body? The ego seems to be there only in the waking and dream states when there are experiences, that is, when the mind is functioning. Is it there also in deep sleep? The absence of I can never be experienced in deep sleep. Also, when I get up, I say, I slept well. The ego is dormant in deep sleep. Ahankara laye suptau. Drugdusha Vivek 10. The ego manifests with thoughts and it becomes unmanifest in their absence. But the pure self ever shines. How does one reach the self? By passing or eliminating the ego. When we inquire into its birthplace, we realize the self which is beyond the ego. Many around the globe are searching for their roots, the birthplace of their ancestors and their culture. They feel rootless without knowing their past. Strange that no one inquires into their true roots. Their search would culminate in the origin of the ego. They would discover that we are all born from that one truth beyond all differences of color, tradition, creed, nationality, and religion. The following verse pinpoints the birth of the elusive ego. देहो न जानाति सतो न जन्म देह प्रमाणोऽन्यौदेति मध्ये अहङ्कृति ग्रन्थि विबन्ध सूक्ष्म शरीर चेतो भवजीवनामा. The body does not know of the truth, there is no birth. In the middle of these two, another of the size of the body arises, which is of the names ego, not, bondage, subtle body, mind, the realm of becoming, and the individual. The body does not know itself and anything else. It is inert. Being inert, it undergoes change, birth, decay, and death. The ego, however, has sentiency, therefore, it is not the body. The truth or existence is birthless, therefore, deathless. The ego, however, has birth and death, therefore, it is not the truth. Being different from the body and the truth, it still has characteristics of both. It cannot be found either in the body or the truth, that is, they are both free from ego. At the same time, the ego can never be found outside the body. In no object or being outside the body do we have the I notion. Now, strangely, we realize that the ego is neither in the body nor outside the body. Where does one catch this undeniably existing entity? This ego arises as though in between the sentient truth and the inert body. Since it has no independent existence, it takes support of both. It assumes the size of the body and the sentiency of the truth. For example, without the sun and the water, there would be no reflection. The reflection takes its illumination from the sun and its unsteadiness from the water. Without the sun and the water, there would be no experience of the reflection to the mind. The ego parades around in various names. Every particular name that we have is his name alone. For example, I am Mr. Patel, I am fat, I am an engineer, and so on. Here are a few common names that we as egos share. Ahankar, ego, aham karomi iti. The notion of doership in every action is the ego. For example, I built this house, I married, and so on. Granthi, knot. As thought, it ties the inert body and the sentient self together. A knot is nothing but the rope in a particular form. The ego is pure consciousness appearing as the limited entity. It sustains the chain of ignorance, desire, action, which are called the knots of the heart. Vibandha, well bound, bondage. It binds us to the body and its limitations and to the objects of this world through the notion of minus. It alone is the cause of the bondage of birth and death. Sukshma Sharira, subtle body. It is not perceived by the senses like the gross body, therefore subtle. It is perishable like the gross body, therefore Sharira. Cheta, mind, Bodha Lakshana. It has the capacity to reflect consciousness and know. It is as though closer to consciousness, Chit, than the body. Bhava, realm of becoming. Its existence depends on becoming something. So all the time it prompts man into action to become. For example, I want to become a doctor. I want to become good. Jiva, individual, jivati iti jiva. It enlivens the body and the mind. It always maintains its identity or individuality as I. In this verse number 27, the Sri Ram biography of the ego, its birth, activities, achievements, and death are described. That's रूपोद्भवो रूपतति प्रतिष्ठो रूपाशनोद्धूतगृहीतरूपः स्वयं विरूपस्वविचारकाले धावत्यहङ्कारपिशाचेषः. This ghost of ego is born amidst forms, based on a group of forms, the eater of forms, who has given up and held forms, is by itself formless, and runs away at the time of inquiry into itself. As discussed in the previous verse, the ego is born as thought in between the body and the self. Its very existence is supported by both. It assumes the form of the body, gross or subtle, as soon as it comes into existence. For example, I am fair or I am sacred, I am scared. It thereafter remains comfortably amongst various names and forms it has gathered around itself. People therefore love titles and their letterheads are full of them. The ego feels greatly satisfied the more there are and the more they are known. Some people only work when they are given a titled post, for example, chairman of the reception committee. We need food to live and relish food for joy. The ego has a gluttonous appetite for forms. No form is inedible for its taste. For example, I am a worm or I am a monster. It puts an extra weight when it feeds on fame, status, or power. For example, I won the Olympic gold. I wrote this poem. It also has the achievement of having worked ceaselessly, even in the laziest form, from birth to death, from innumerable lifetimes, except for periods when it lies dormant in deep sleep or coma. It rises to own the first thought and rests only after owning the last one. What does the ego do throughout the day? It gives up and takes on forms at the incredible speed of the mind. With every thought, it has become something new, having completely renounced its previous allegiance. For example, a moment before I was sad, now I am glad, and the next instant I may be bad or mad, remaining very much alive. It even declares its own death. I am egoless. It makes no distinction of caste, creed, color, religion, or species. For example, I am a Muslim, I am an elephant. No ego is superior or inferior to another, even though the form is, it assumes, could be superior or inferior, gross or refined. That is, I am remains the same for a beggar or for a king. How does one catch this ego? Being extremely elusive, it escapes all attempts at its capture. The only way is direct confrontation. When we remove its support, the various names and forms, and we ask, who am I? Maya cannot bear inquiry. Vicharam na sahate Maya. Vicharam na sahate sa Maya. Being an illusion, it runs away or melts into thin air like a ghost. The ghost scares us, assuming various forms, but is itself formless or substanceless. The survival instinct of this ego is very strong. It therefore allows us all freedom to do anything except inquire into itself. It does not mind academic study regarding it, but does not allow actual inquiry. If true inquiry begins, we are rid of the ego for all time to come. The way towards true victory is भावे हमस्सर्वमिदं विभाति लये हमो नैव विभाति किञ्चित् तस्मादहं रूपमिदं समस्तं तन्मार्गणं सर्वजयाय मार्गः. In the being of the ego, all this shines. In the dissolution of the ego, nothing at all shines. Therefore, all this is of the form of the ego. The search for it is the way to all victory. The world is experienced only in the existence of the ego, and seems to disappear only when the ego disappears. That which is in the beginning and the end alone appears as the experience in between. For example, clay is there before the pot came into existence. It remains after the pot breaks. So the clay alone appears as the pot. The world similarly is of the form of the ego, but we know from previous verses that the ego is an illusory entity which borrows its own existence from the pure self. So the pure self alone was, is, and will be. Knowing the self, the ego and the ego created world of plurality disappear. All of us wish to conquer the world or part of it. Many stoop to any means to conquer it. We are unable to conquer all, and we find that what we did conquer also does not stay conquered. It has to be reconquered time and again. In the process, we get conquered many a time. Also, when a thing, being, or circumstance seems in our hand, there is always the fear that it may be taken away from under our very nose. This is well understood in politics, where there is a constant fight for power. The victor many times realizes that he is the loser, as he has landed up with something he never wanted in the form of misery, fear, or hatred of others. The most difficult thing to conquer in this world is our own mind. It requires patience, intelligence, and sheer guts. Having conquered the mind, the world is as well conquered, as it can no longer perturb us or hold us in its power. When I understand my mind, I also gain insight into all minds. When I know the source of all minds, by knowing the origin of the ego, I, the pure self, becomes the monarch of all I survey. I find that there is nothing other than me left to conquer. Usually, in victory, the victor remains to celebrate his victory, even in the if the enemy may be slain or captured. Here, there is no enemy, and the ego who attempts to gain victory gives up its separate existence to merge in the self. The author again explains what is the true state of being. सत्यास्थितिर्नाहमुदेति यत्र तच्चोदयस्थानगवेषणेन विना न नश्येद्यदि तन्न नश्येत् स्वात्मैकरूपा कथमस्तु निष्ठा. That is true being, where the ego does not rise. That again will not perish without a search for its place of emergence. If that does not perish, can there be the being in the form of oneness with oneself? As long as the ego exists, it will prompt us to become something or the other. Only when I feel unfulfilled with my present state do I want to become something other than what I am. When I say that I want to be good or happy, it shows that presently I am neither. But remaining as the limited ego, can I ever be truly content? The scriptures say there can never be happiness in finitude. Na alpe sukham asti. Chandogya Upanishad 7.23.1. Only when the ego goes, never to come back, will I be in my true state of being. This state is not the peace of mind in concentration or the thoughtless state of meditation of a yogi. The egoless state of the nature of oneness with the self is a permanent state, whereas the other states are not. We continue in next part. Hari Om. Shri Sadgurave Namaha. Om Shri